of
This meeting is being recorded.
got it twice. Welcome to this meeting of the Somerset Bus Partnership. I think there are now 45 people here, which I think is a great turnout.
Tony, I'm going to mute everyone because there is noise in the background, so you will have to unmute yourself.
I will do that. Right, I'm still here and you're still here, Peter. I'd like to, first of all, just to thank you all for coming. We did circulate an agenda, which I haven't got in front of me. Yes, I have. We will try and update you on the bus funding, including anything we've heard on the Bus Somerset's bus service improvement plan. We will talk about a bus manifesto that we're going to use to invite unitary council candidates to support, and an update on what we've been doing, and very much like to hear from you what you think you can do for buses in your area and ways in which Somerset Bus Partnership can help. Is there anything you want to say, Peter, before we start?
No, that's
Do you
fine.
want to run the first couple of slides?
Yeah.
So this is really just an update as to who we are. We're connecting communities and encouraging public transport. I'm Tony Rees. It was my idea to set up something like this just about a year ago. I think we're just about celebrating our first birthday. I didn't bring a cake, but we set ourselves up as a response to the National Bus Strategy produced by the government just over a year ago, which suggested that there was going to be a lot of money available to support buses in the future and to improve the bus services. In that year, we tried to recruit some local representatives. My experience in running groups like this is that for buses, there is a tradition of nobody complains about their bus service loudly and to the right people. Everybody just accepts that buses aren't what they should be, but we never actually get anybody to do anything about it. And the National Bus Strategy said the local authority would need to involve representatives of local groups. And there wasn't such a group. There are one or two bus groups from towns and villages, but there was nobody representing the whole of Somerset. And I felt it was important we got some people together who could actually be seen to be representative, be interested in their local bus services, and also willing to spend some time trying to do something about it. So in a year, we've grown from nothing to 120. And the idea was we would be your voice, or we would actually get you to do some of the work also in being a local voice, so that your voice can be heard when we are in discussion with particularly the local county council as local transport authority. And as we move into the next phase of political manoeuvrings in Somerset, as we move towards a unitary authority. The National Bus Strategy required the local authority to set up a bus advisory board and to set up a user and stakeholder group to hear from local people. Peter and I are chair and co-chair of the bus user group and have a seat on the bus advisory board, which is supposedly the point at which the council will talk publicly to the operators to agree how to improve our bus services. The problem we have is that we still haven't heard anything, unless anybody knows differently, about the state of the money that was promised to local government to improve bus services. It's been delayed a couple of times, and all the rumours seem to suggest that there will be a small number of local authorities that get the vast proportion of the money available, and that we will probably get either nothing or very little. Which means that if we want any improvement in bus services, we are going to have to campaign for them. The council over the last 20 years has reduced funding to bus services in Somerset. I would say, apart from one or two exceptions, the bus service we have is just not fit for purpose. I can never find a bus going anywhere I want to go at a time I want to go there. But to make a successful campaigning group, we actually have to encourage the use of local buses. So where there are routes and where they are surviving, we actually need a lot of people to use them to try and make sure they don't decline any further. We are trying to turn around a decline that's happened over the last 20 years. The main thing I think for tonight we wish to present to you is a manifesto that we would wish any candidate for a unitary position would sign up to. We've been talking to all the political parties. In May, you are voting for 110 new councillors of the unitary authority, which will immediately have control over the policies that are being developed for the new unitary authority when it comes into existence next year. Peter, would you like to tell us about what it is that we are trying to get everybody to sign up to?
Thank you, and thank you for, we're now almost up to 60 people on this call, which is, I think, is an exceptionally high number, and it just shows how much interest there is across Somerset in the issue of buses. And I'm sad to say that that interest isn't in the excellence of our bus services. It's, as Tony has said, that our bus services are not simply fit for purpose. And that's not just a bunch of campaigners saying that. There is a survey done of bus users across the country talking about their satisfaction with their bus services, and bus users in Somerset have deemed our bus services as being the worst in the whole of England, the worst bus service in England. And we want to do something about that. And I'm sure the fact that you're on this call indicates that you and people in your communities want better bus services. And that's what we're campaigning to do. And our group started 12 months ago, and it was because Boris Johnson launched the Bus Better program. Boris Johnson is a great supporter of buses. During COP26, he had all the international leaders transported on double-decker buses. He is really keen, having been Mayor of London, to see bus services brought up to something akin to the quality of service that you get in London. And he found £3 billion to transform our bus services. Unfortunately, his chancellor has siphoned off 2/3 of that just to keep bus services going. So instead of having a pot of 3 billion to transform bus services, we have a pot of just over, what's left of it, just over £1 billion. But it's still a lot of money if you're one of the successful groups. But 12 months ago, we were looking at April 2022 as a time when our buses were going to be transformed, literally transformed. That's why Tony and I and Glenn and John Hassel joined and set up the Somerset Bus Partnership, because we saw it as an opportunity to really transform bus services in Somerset. What nobody had anticipated was the sheer extent and depth of the COVID epidemic, and it still most definitely has not yet gone away. It might not be as painful when you get it, but huge numbers of people are getting it, and that's impacted on buses. So where are we at today with buses? This week, I was in a meeting which Dan Norris, the Mayor of the West of England Combined Authority, called. The West of England is just to the north of our Somerset borders, stretches out through Bath and Bristol to South Gloucester. And he had got Doug Claringbould, one of the managing director of First West of England, and Nick Small, head of strategic development at Stagecoach. And he asked them, how were things currently in terms of what is life like for bus operators? And what those bus operators, Doug and Nick, agreed was that bus operators were facing, their words, not mine, a perfect storm. They were faced with escalating operating costs, with fuel prices going through the roof, driver costs, there's a shortage of drivers, and they're having to pay ever more to recruit drivers. And so almost out of control operating costs. And at the same time, the numbers coming back to buses were slower and lower than they had anticipated. So they had cost escalation and a revenue shortfall. Plus they had the uncertainty. Yes, we had got an extension, and nearly 100 people in Somerset had written to the Department of Transport to say that we needed to get this bus recovery grant extended. We did get it extended, and thanks to all those people who wrote to the ministers about it. But they actually haven't yet told the bus companies how they're going to get, what money they're going to get from that bus recovery grant. And as Dan Norris said, that's a crazy way of trying to ask large companies or small companies to operate bus services and not to keep them well informed as to how much revenue they're going to get. So these two of the biggest operators in Somerset, certainly First is overwhelmingly the biggest operator in Somerset, are faced at the moment by a perfect storm. And if that wasn't enough, Doug Claringbould told me that there is a COVID epidemic rampant amongst his depots, particularly in Bristol. And last week alone, he had nearly 40 bus drivers out because of COVID, which meant lots of very short-term cancellations to bus services. So those bus operators have got major problems. But so therefore have bus passengers. It's been a perfect storm for bus passengers too. Throughout COVID, we've had repeated changes in bus timetables by many of the operators, and they've often been introduced without proper messaging and communication about those bus timetable changes. In fact, bus operators have really failed to communicate with their customers. We have online, yes, we have lots of new devices and opportunities online, but there are also a lot of out-of-date bus timetables online, and it's very hard to know what the correct bus timetable is to look at online. But of course, there are very many bus passengers who don't actually have online access, either because they're disinclined to do it, or they can't afford it, or they don't have a smartphone. So where do they look for information? Well, they look to their bus stop, and hopefully there is a bus timetable case at their bus stop. Too many in Somerset haven't. And many of those bus timetables are old bus timetables and are out of date. Not only that, First Bus has now stopped printing bus timetables. Now, I've been in marketing all my life. I've worked across 20, 30 different business sectors, and there is no other business sector like the bus industry for mistreating its customers, and most especially mistreating its loyal customers, where no effort is being, or not enough effort is being made to keep bus passengers informed on what is actually happening in terms of bus information. And that's simply not good enough. That is a responsibility which, under the Bus Better, will be taken on by the local transport authority. But at the moment, our bus passengers often don't know about bus changes to bus schedules, and they certainly don't get told well enough about cancellations to buses. And that's simply not good enough. No other industry would treat its customers as badly as does the bus industry. So the bus industry is not coming out of this whole process well, but they have to learn from the mistakes they've made, and hopefully they will. And we need to keep on telling them so as well. But coming back to Bus Better, where are we at with it now? Well, 12 months ago, it was launched. Somerset Bus Partnership has been in a dialogue with the Department for Transport. And as you can see, a couple of weeks ago, we had this letter from them saying, the central aim of the national bus strategy is to get more people traveling by bus. And we will only achieve this if we can make buses a practical and an attractive alternative to the car for more people. I think the question we have to ask here in Somerset is, are buses a practical and an attractive alternative to the car? And the numbers speak for themselves. Over the last 10 years in Somerset, bus passenger numbers have fallen by 40% up until the beginning of COVID. And it was an escalating fall. It was getting worse, which quite clearly demonstrates that Somerset bus services are not fit for purpose, as Tony said earlier. They also said that this Bus Better strategy is explicit about seeking to ensure that the needs of rural transport users are given equal consideration to those in urban environments. Now, there are over 70 local transport authorities, of which Somerset County Council is but one of them, The great concern at the moment, and it's a political concern, is that the authorities which are going to get the money are going to be the urban authorities, and probably quite a lot of them in the northern towns for political reasons. But we can only but hope that our 5 Tory MPs in Somerset have been making the case very strongly that Somerset most definitely deserves to be one of the authorities to be given funding. And I know that our MPs, because I've talked to my local MP, and I know he has been campaigning very hard to make that point to the Department of Transport. Finally, strong local plans delivered through enhanced partnerships between authorities and bus operators are crucial to achieving this transformation of our bus services. Now, all credit to Somerset County Council, because the government has actually put on hold these enhanced partnerships. They were supposed to come into operation on April the 1st, but the government has delayed it and they haven't actually given an operational date. But Somerset County Council said, we will continue developing our enhanced partnership. And today, only today, they have announced that that has now been sealed between Somerset County Council and the bus operators. That having been said, Head of Highways and Transport, Mike O'Dowd, has admitted that this will only have real meaning as a transformational tool if Somerset does get a generous settlement in the bus service improvement plan allocations from the government. So the bus service improvement plan, this is the one that Somerset put together in a really impressive document, 180 pages, really serious professional analysis of all the problems in Somerset and the bus services. It was ambitious as it was asked to be, and Somerset has asked for an eye-watering £163 million to get their bus services up to standard. Now, in the current budget for Somerset, Somerset is spending just over £3 million on buses. But in their analysis of what needs to be done for our bus services, they've identified that they need £163 million to be spent, which indicates that over the past 10 years, we've not been investing what we ought to have been investing in our buses in Somerset. But this bid has been professionally put together with the top consultancy, WSP, and we can all hope, every one of us on this call, hope that we will actually be successful in that bid. There is a lot of comment at the moment that that isn't likely, but we must just but hope that that will be the outcome. And why should we be successful? Because we have the worst passenger satisfaction score for bus services in England and the second lowest bus journeys per head, because they've dropped by 40% over the last 10 years. So there is a really strong argument that our MPs can make and present to the Department for Transport to ensure that we do get a very significant settlement. The view of many is that we won't, but we can just but hope that we will. We had hoped, and there were a lot of rumours and beliefs out there that concurrent with Rishi Sunak's spring statement yesterday, there would also be an announcement about bus service improvement plans, but no announcement has been made, which rather suggests that there probably won't be an announcement until after the May the 5th election. People had thought we would have been told in December, and then those in the know said we'd be told in January, and those even more in the know said it would be February, and here we are in March, and we've still not yet been told. The bids were put in at the end of October, still no announcement. But what is important about the Somerset bid, and it's been made categorically clear by the leader of Somerset County Council, Councillor David Fothergill, and he's said it on 2 occasions to me personally. All the policies and the deliverables set out within this Somerset BSIP, totaling 163 million, are subject to additional funding being provided by government. Somerset County Council will not fund any extra spending on buses. So it's worth just looking at where we stand in relation here in Somerset with our neighbouring rural shire counties. So we've looked at Cornwall, we've looked at Wiltshire, we've looked at Devon, we've looked at Dorset, and there we are at Somerset. If we take the average of those 5 shire counties, all our neighbouring counties, we're spending currently per head of population in Somerset 40% below that average. And so clearly and we've been spending at roughly that level for the past 10 years. So clearly we need to have more appropriate funding, more funding which is going to actually improve our bus services and get more people onto buses in Somerset. It is worth noting that Somerset's carbon footprint, transport accounts for 46%, nearly half of our carbon footprint, which is far higher than almost anywhere else in the country. Transport is a real big climate footprint issue in Somerset, yet further reason for encouraging the use and supporting our buses. And as we know, there is an election coming up, and we want to make buses an election issue. Now, I know there is a Conservative councillor who's actually on this call tonight, and I've met quite a number of Conservative councillors who believe, frankly, every bit as strongly as I do in the need to improve our local bus services, because they listen to their electorate and they listen to the problems that they are experiencing. And we do need to have better bus services going through our villages and towns, and they're being told that. The current latest document for the elections talks about campaigning for rural bus services, but exclusively in terms of the bid that Somerset had put forward for the £163 million. And we can hope and keep on hoping that we will get that amount of money, and perhaps we will, and perhaps we don't. But if we don't get it, what has been made very clear by Councillor Fothergill is that there won't be any more money for buses, and in the next financial year, the 22-23 budget, there is no significant increase for bus funding coming from Somerset County Council. So we then have looked at what the Lib Dems are saying as being the second largest party in Somerset, and they've produced an impressive document outlining a number of strategies and policies. but significantly, there is no mention of buses. No mention of buses at all so far by the Lib Dems. As Tony has said, we've been talking to the Lib Dems, we've been talking to the Conservatives. I've talked to John Woodman, cabinet member for the Conservatives. We've been talking to the Greens and to the Labour Party. We've been talking to all the parties. We don't have a party affiliation. What we have got is an affiliation to buses. And in the absence of seeing things from certainly the two major parties, we've developed a 6-point bus manifesto. And we would like to get individual candidates, regardless of parties. So we would like to approach Conservative candidates, Lib Dem candidates, Green candidates, Labour candidates, independent candidates, to agree our Somerset Bus Manifesto. 6 points, I'll take you through it fairly quickly. I think most people would say that our manifesto is a very sound one. We want better buses for all our communities. The fact that we've got the best part of 60 people from across Somerset representing a large number of communities across Somerset is an indication of that. We want a core network of frequent, high quality services linking our towns and villages. Back in 2010, Somerset County Council decided they would not support any evening services, no Sunday services, and very few Saturday services. Now, even back in 2010, we weren't a 9-to-5, 5-day-a-week economy. But here we are in 2022, we are most definitely not that type of economy. We're a tourist-centric county. We're a service county. People have to work shifts in hospitals, and they also have to work shifts in many restaurants and service sector jobs. We need buses to run when people are coming back from work, not just when they're going to work. Because if they can't get back from work in the evenings, then they're going to have to drive to work in the daytime. So they will need to make those journeys by car or by some other means. We need to have buses running when people need them for their work, to get to hospitals, to get to college, to education, whatever. And so it's a really crucial issue that we should have enhanced weekend and evening services. That would be a radical change of policy by this council. But I know that councillors of every party would support such a move. Then we have many small parishes, rural parishes, supporting the Somerset Bus Partnership, talking about the slinky bus services, the demand response bus services. They need to be enhanced significantly because they are lifelines to many small rural parishes. They need to be made available to all, not just to senior citizens. And they need to have, again, longer operating hours. I think most people would say those would really result in major benefits for the residents of this county. We need to have an integrated transport network, a key issue in the government's Bus Better policy. We don't actually have a lot of rail stations in Somerset, and just to pick up two of them, Castle Carey needs to have a greatly improved bus network. It's a really strategically important rail station linking all the way through to London, and we need to have improved bus services to Castle Kerry. If we take one close to where I live, Frome Town railway station, there is not a to and from bus service to that railway station at all. Absolutely crucial that these are introduced. Moving on. We were told that the government was going to launch a campaign to get us back onto public transport, having for 15 months told us that public transport wasn't safe. We now need to see an effort by Somerset working with the bus operators who have an obligation to promote their own bus services and their own businesses. Why aren't they out there telling us that their buses are back, that their buses are the environmentally responsible way to travel? And why aren't they making the very strong case that they now can make, is that when you look at how much it costs, best part of £100 to fill up a tank of petrol in your car, buses are the economic way of going. That message really needs to be got out there, because we need to get more people back onto buses. And we need information. Yes, we need the online information, and Somerset needs to be congratulated with its new travel portal, which they're in the process of launching, which is a major step forward. It's a major step forward for those people who have access to the internet, but there are a lot of people who can't afford and don't have access to the internet, and they need information at bus stops. Ideally, it's real-time information, but that's few and far between in Somerset. But there is an obligation on bus operators and the local authority to actually ensure that that information is at bus stops. And if the bus operators and the local transport authority isn't taking on board that obligation, then I think it's down to bus campaigners like us to get that information out to our local communities. One initiative which is in the BSIP, which is a really good one, is it shouldn't just be older people, senior citizens, who are encouraged to use buses by incentive prices, reduced prices. People under 25 who are facing all sorts of financial challenges, they also should be offered cheaper tickets, and that's in the BSIP, and it's a real initiative which should be taken up and taken forward. Who doesn't want to see electric buses, or possibly hydrogen-powered buses? But let's settle with electric buses rather than diesel buses. We all do. But it costs a couple of £100,000 to buy an electric bus, and that's not the end of it, because then you need special infrastructure, you need charging points, and often special new garages for an electric powered bus fleet. Yes, we need it. Yes, we should have it. Yes, we want it, but it's going to cost money, and that money has to come from somewhere. Which is really taking us back to the core point. I would imagine few would argue with most of those previous points, but that comes with a recognition that we need to pay for that. A lot of that money, one might hope, will come from the government. But if it doesn't come from the government, if we don't get the BSIP that we've asked for, or if we don't get most of the BSIP that we've asked for, we can't carry on in the way that we have and see a continuing decline in bus usage in a county where the biggest contribution, nearly half the contribution to our climate carbon emissions, is from transport. So that's why we do need to see more money spent by Somerset County Council on buses. And so we have produced, and we will be printing very shortly, this Somerset Bus Manifesto. If you would like copies, please email us or contact us through our Facebook page. Email us at somersetbuspartnership@gmail.com. We will get copies to you. We'll get copies to you in the next 10, 14 days. And what we would ask you to do with those copies is go and talk to every one of the prospective candidates and get them to see if they will endorse this Bus Manifesto. We're not trying to do this any longer at a party level. We're trying to do this at an individual level of councillors, whether they're Conservative, whether they're Lib Dem, Green or Labour. We want individual prospective candidates and then ultimately councillors to have said, yes, we're signing up to the Bus Manifesto. And then when that new unitary council is in place, we will have people standing up and calling for the actions which are in that Bus Manifesto. One final point, one final word after very many from me, and I do apologize, but one of the things we have to recognize is that we now have a 6-month window of further bus funding. Grant Shapps, the Transport Minister, has said that there won't be any further bus funding after October of this year. And so the next section of our presentations, which Glenn Burrows is going to give, is what we need to do locally in our communities to try and get more people onto our local buses and get them up and running. I see that we've got a number of hands up. I'd like to just get through Glenn's presentation, and then we'll take questions after that. Glenn, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Tony, for that very full description of where we are. But what I want to say is that the Somerset Bus Partnership and the Bus Service Improvement Plan, as we know, were born out of the government's proposals, the Bus Back Better proposals. But I think it's become rapidly clear to all of us that this is a long-term issue, that you know, the sleeping tiger of the need for better bus services and the need to advertise them better and all those issues and the need for more funding and more commitment, most of all, from our Transport Authority, isn't just dependent on what the announcement is and how much money we get from the Bus Back Better Fund. So I think that's the first thing I want to stress, that, you know, we're all here out of an awakened passion and desire to get things right. And I think we mustn't be disillusioned and daunted if we don't get the amount of money that we're hoping for, the £163 million. So what I really want to just talk about is how we as local representatives, not just reliant on the sort of inner circle of the Somerset Bus Partnership, but all of us, we're all equally important to this venture, and how we as representatives across Somerset, a very big county, how we can sort of develop a local awareness, a local demand, a local lobbying voice, which of course can be fed back to those of us that are represented on the Bus Advisory Board. So we are talking regularly with the bus companies and with the Transport Authority, but we do need that information, and we need that local information because you represent the people who really know what's going on in your locality. So what I want us to do is just come up with a few sort of ideas, and you will have more, I'm sure, and much better ideas, but just some suggestions as to the kind of things that we can start doing now rather than waiting to see what the government gives to Somerset County Council. There are other sources of funding, and we've got a commitment from the County Council that they will investigate other sources of funding. So I don't think we can rely on just the government's promise from the Bus Back Better arrangements. So just listed, have you got the list of points that I... Okay, so these are just some suggestions for what we can all be doing in our particular areas. So what I'd like to do is just go through those and ask you to consider them and to perhaps amend them or add suggestions of your own. And what I'm going to suggest is that you put a Q in the chat box. I can't see all of you on the screen. I see that there are already some hands up, Peter, wanting to speak. It's going to be quite difficult to get the two things together.
Yeah, just carry on for the time being. We'll take points very shortly.
Okay, so if I go through these 7 things, then perhaps if you have a comment to make, could you put a Q in the chat box, and then I'll know who to call on and what order. So the first thing is, could you consider setting up a bus user group in your town or in your area? And if one already exists, join it and encourage others to do the same. We've just set one up in Bridgewater, early days yet, but I think it's quite important that we'll be bringing people together in the Bridgewater area who know what we need, who know what's wrong with the bus services, and who will have suggestions. So that idea of you as reps perhaps initiating a bus user group is one of the things that we're quite keen to propose. Second thing you might do, we've already referred to bus shelters, and they really are the poor relation, aren't they, of the transport industry. But you might want to carry out an audit in your area of bus shelters, where they are, what kind of condition they're in, how clean they are, how welcoming they are, and report those findings to whichever authority in your area, whether it's the town or the parish or the district council. Report your findings to them, so that it's clear that we're not just interested in the bus services. We want the facilities to be up to scratch as well. So that's the second thing. We also would like people to start discussing ways of helping to promote bus travel in the area. It's already been said, it's no good us campaigning to get more buses if people don't use them. And we really are, it's not just the bus companies. I think we really are very slow to promote bus travel. And so things like press releases from time to time, live events, a leaflet, a poster in public spaces, something which will start people thinking more about bus travel and how to promote it. And, I don't think, as Peter said earlier, we can't just leave that to the bus companies. They're not very good at it, and we could do a better job. And so we perhaps could start doing that in our localities. Fourthly, of course, develop a blueprint for what would be the ideal bus network in your area. It's really essential that when we meet with the Bus Advisory Board that we have those plans. We aren't going to know. Those of us that are co-chairs, we don't know what goes on in your area. So you need to develop that area network plan, and let us have that feedback. It's very important, and you can't do that unless you actually consult with people in your locality. Perhaps write to or meet regularly with your local MP to discuss the importance of bus travel. When we're talking here about, the things that have been raised, the social mobility, well-being, sustainability for the environment. We're not going to let this topic go away, because it isn't just about the government giving a cash handout. It's about the long-term sustainability and success and health and well-being of our communities. So that's why it's important. That's why it's not just dependent on a one-off offer from the government. This is a long-term issue that we really have to commit ourselves to. And we really must insist that our local MPs make that commitment as well and tell us how they're going to support us and how they're going to promote the importance of bus travel. It's already been said, using our Bus Manifesto, invite candidates for election to the new unitary council to meet and discuss. And if you've got a bus user group, or if you organise a public sort of meeting about bus transport, then there's an opportunity to invite candidates to come along and discuss our Bus Manifesto and how it relates to their plans. And then, of course, finally, if you've got any of your own ideas, we'd love to hear them. And I think that, you know, that is what I want to do tonight, to ask you to consider that list and see how you could add to it. Okay, Peter.
Thank
And
you.
Tony.
Okay.
Sue, would you like to, you've had your hand up for some time, would you like to comment? Please go ahead.
Yes, I've just been listening to what you said, Glenn, and the fact that you say about contacting your MP. I mean, really, how does Somerset County Council get away with saying it's going to give nothing towards buses? I cannot understand how they think they can say that, and not everybody's going to say, "Oh yes, that's okay, that's fine." You know, we'll just fall back on our own resources. One thing I'd like to say is, you mentioned, Peter, about Glenn McDowd. No, Pat McDowd, Mr. McDowd.
Mike O'Dowd, yeah.
Council. He was part of WSP, wasn't he? Who drew up the BSIP?
He commissioned WSP, yes. Yeah. And
part of the plan was to have a transport officer for buses. Now, has Somerset County Council already jumped the gun and appointed him as a transport person for buses, for trains, for whatever else? It should have been ring-fenced for buses. I mean, I'm just fed up with the fact that SCC can manage to find money for, a road going up towards Taunton railway station. It can find money for this. Nothing for buses. I think it's hideous. And we've never actually had anybody from SCC say why. Why? Do they think we're just numpties or what? That, you know, they can just say, no, there must be a reason. And I think it's about time they told us. Do they not like buses? Or what is it? It's just downright insulting to everybody in Somerset. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel. So to come back to that, has he been appointed, Mr. McDowd, as transport person for the county?
Okay, thank you, Sue.
On the back of that bid, which was supposed to be for buses.
No.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Just to explain, Mike O'Dowd-Jones is the overall director of highways and transport, and under him he's got a very considerable number of people both on the transport side and also in the highways side. They have strengthened their team on transport over the last 12 months, and I'm sure if they get the BSIP money, they will further strengthen it. As to why buses aren't a greater priority for Somerset County Council, I think that's down to us. We haven't made it, to all of us, all the residents, we have that, and particularly to bus users, we just haven't made enough noise and made it a big enough issue. Politicians bend to pressure, and I think that's what's so important now for the Somerset Bus Partnership to do, and everyone who's been associated with it, the nearly 60 people on the call tonight, the 120 representatives we've got, we have to get pressure on those candidates standing for the election and tell them just how important buses are to the well-being of our communities. And so it's down to us. Michael Larry, would you like to comment, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. And I think that there's a lot of good information that's been given us tonight. I'm going to follow on from Sue a little bit. The 40% that we are not giving to bus services within Somerset, and when we compare that to the other counties, puts us in a very poor position for bus users, but also if we're trying to get money from the government as well. And I don't believe that the present sort of leader of the county council can sort of promote a bid whereby saying we're not going to give any extra money, because they're really going to be foolish in that approach. We've got to, in our campaigning through this election, but in other ways, make sure that we have parity with other local authorities and also other counties where their bus provision is far greater than what we're getting from Somerset. The other thing that I think is that Somerset has never had a transport forum. It's never been campaigned by any of the political parties for a transport forum on Somerset. That's where you have the consultation with the people. That's where you have that accountability as well. It's been very difficult to get hold of the portfolio holder for transport and for buses in Somerset. Simply, they won't even come along to our own transport forum and actually speak to us about their plan. So I think that's got to be important. You've started it, you've got it going and everything else, but we've got to keep that consultation going, that we are important. The other thing I want to come back to is what Glenn was talking about in terms of events. In certain places, they do have these events which are go to work on a bus today type of thing, and the using of that service. And I know, and I've seen it in certain places. Admittedly, that was in Guernsey, but at least it was an attempt. And with also, you know, using the sort of active travel. And I think that if we could get not just the bus users group, but also the bus owners and everything else who are part of that, to have a collective campaigning week on where we start to use buses, that might get people used to saying, yeah, I can go to work on the bus, yes. I can get back. I find the bus easy to use and so forth. We've seen in Bridgewater the way that they bus people out to Hinckley C every day for, you know, passenger solutions. You know, that sort of thing can happen. It can take a lot of the traffic and emissions that Glenn was talking about in terms of climate change off the road. So I think, you know, what we've got to do is say, we want you to spend as much money as other counties are on buses. And at the moment, in terms of passenger journeys, you are extremely poor and we are disadvantaged and we don't have the equality of access to that type of service.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I've kept David Redgewell waiting for quite a while, so I'll go to David and then Mike.
Well, I think Mike's stole a bit of my thunder, because I've worked, you know, across the southwest, a bit like things that Stevens recognises, that if you go just a few miles out of Somerset into Devon, which is a Conservative-controlled local authority, you see an awful lot of money spent on public bus services and public rail services. Very proud they are of the money they spend. Very proud of the fact they produce timetables and marketing, the county council that is. I'm very proud of the fact they put bus interchanges in at places like Barnstable, and you can go to Ilfracombe at 12 o'clock at night, you can go to Bideford and you can go on Sundays. It's all paid for by Devon. The new railway to Oakhampton has a bus link down to Tavistock. And that's all part of the process. But what I'm trying to get to the point, even in the you know, we've got a mayor, as Peter points out, who, you know, lives in what is historic Somerset, you know, the Unitaries. And the point is that we've taken delivery of 27 brand new buses in a bit small unitary authority called North Somerset, where there's a political will to find £500,000 to put buses back on the road at Weston Supermere, which have been dropped by first, just emergency money out of the taxpayers. And this is happening across the southwest. And the thing is, I know North Somerset's not a Conservative council, but most of the councils I deal with are Conservative. If you go to Gloucester tonight, Gloucestershire, every bus stop is maintained and cleaned. Every bus shelter is cleaned by the county council with the parishes. They have man with van that goes round and checks all the timetables, real-time information in Gloucester and Cheltenham, Dursley and places, rural areas. And again, they precept. And there was been an issue, as you've probably seen on the TV programme, which I know Peter was heavily involved with myself, where Dimmock got no buses. Well, the county council yesterday announced it was going to put some buses back in that area and is working on a plan. Now, Somerset can't rely on Baroness Fear. And the issue she keeps saying is, and I'll make it clear, there are 16 local authorities and they know who they are, who are going to get money. And I know who they are, but I'm not allowed to say anything on this call. There are another 20 that is going to get a little bit of money. Some of those are in the southwest. And again, I'm not going to say anything on this call because the minister needs to explain. And some will be told that you haven't done much yourself. You haven't produced much yourself. You haven't precepted your taxpayers. You haven't really funded things in the last few years. I can think of 2 councils that have carried this policy through. David Fothergill, to be fair, did try to turn this round and put more money back in. But we've still not got a situation. We've got district councils that don't maintain bus stations and shelters, and they own them. Mendip District Council, I've been on to you for months now to maintain the assets they own and clean them and repair them. And when I was involved in that council, we did very effectively, and it was a Lib Labour council. Then the Tories took it over and they ran it and did the same thing, but it's not happening now. So Somerset Council owns a bus station in Yeovil, but doesn't maintain it. You know, and then we've got the fiasco of Taunton. Well, I've got a great friend called, I've got a great friend called Steve Darling, happens to be a good Liberal Democrat leader down in Torquay. Great man, and I've been working with him recently to develop Torquay Coach Station. I have a good relationship with Steve. He's really keen, he's disabled like me, and he doesn't have a car, he uses public transport. He really sells it. And he needed money for a coach station. So he didn't say, oh, got to wait for the government, might give me a bit of money. He said, we got to find some money. So he's doing a bit of development down at the bus station in Torquay. He's putting up some business units. And that money will be spent to rebuild Torquay coach station. I'm working on the designs with him. So if there's a political will, we've got bus stations in Gloucester paid for by the council, by the Conservative City Council, cross-party that was supported. Brand spanking new. We've got one in Exeter supported by Exeter City Council.
David,
you've got a political will to do this at a local level, at local transport authority level, you will do it. And my message is from Baroness Fear, it's up to local transport authorities to develop their public rail and bus services and ferries if they've got them. So it's over to Somerset Unitary Council, really. And I think that's the message we'll hear from the good Baroness. So, and Bob Driscoll, finish this point, Bob Driscoll's on the call, same message to Dorset County Council, take responsibility and manage your public transport service. That is what you're going to hear about Bus Back Better. And by the way, just to finally say, Bus Back Better is in play now because it's part of the £150 million of extra money in England. Every council has to sign up to enhance quality partnership, and every council has to have in operation now, Transport Authority, a bus service improvement plan, as they won't get the money for the 150 million. That's David, my points.
David, thank you very much. For those who don't know David, and I think most of us probably know David, he's one of the leading public transport, not just bus, but public transport campaigners across the Southwest. Mike Rigby has been waiting very patiently. Perhaps you could introduce yourself, Mike. I know who you are, but you introduce yourself and then please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Peter. My name's Mike Rigby. I'm the portfolio holder for planning and transportation at Somerset West and Taunton Council. And I also have the shadow cabinet position of transportation at the county council, a role I'd very much like to take on in its substantive form rather than the shadow come the May elections. Thank you very much for the presentations this evening. It's been very useful to hear all that. And as the Liberal Democrats, we've listened. We've listened to organisations like yours. We've listened to people like John Hassell. We've listened to people like David Redgewell, who I've seen at county council meetings for at least a decade. And I think you'll like what you come to see in our manifesto. There's a whole section on public transport, not the least of which is about improving the bus service, how we get more people to use the buses, how we provide more bus services. And it's not just about politicians bending to public will, so don't beat yourselves up about that. Politicians are supposed to lead, and I think that's been absent when it comes to public transport generally in the county. It's the district council here at Somerset West and Taunton that have led the project, for example, to reinstate Wellington railway station, because the county council hasn't been able to find any money for that either. We've spent hundreds of thousands of pounds over recent years keeping open the Taunton Park and Rides as the district council. Again, we're not the transport authority. These are things that the county council really ought to have been doing. But, we've kind of staked our claim, I think, and shown that we are very much behind public transport, even though we are, as I say, the district council and not the transport authority. And what we'd like to do, I think, is to bring that energy and drive when it comes to public transport to the county council when the opportunity arises. So yeah, you'll like what we've got to say about buses and public transport in general, and I'm happy to share the manifesto pledges on that with this group. So perhaps if someone could email me at some point this evening where I should send those, and they can be distributed. Thank you very much.
Mike, thank you very much. And we very much welcome whatever commitments you are making on public transport, and we'll make sure that they get widely circulated to all our members. There is somebody who's shown as iPhone, who's had their hand up for some time.
Yeah, hello, I'm Brendan Taylor. I'm a bus enthusiast from Bristol, and I'm not going to pretend to know all the political side of things. But what I do want to talk about is Taunton. Now, Taunton has no night bus service. It hasn't for a number of years, and I've had a lot of people complain to me in particular that they have to. This one particular woman I was talking to in Taunton about 3 months ago, she has to leave work at 6 o'clock because her last bus home is at 6:10. It's just unbelievable. People don't have a lifeline in Taunton anymore. People can't get to work. So I'm going to go back to what Mike said, and you're saying to rely on buses, but how can we do that when people can't rely on them because people can't get to work? I mean, the last buses in Taunton are like 6 o'clock and 5 o'clock. People don't use the buses because they're not convenient. So what do we do?
Thank you. I mean, I think evening buses are a really major issue and problem within Somerset, right across the county. There just are not enough evening buses for to match the need, and one must give that a huge priority. John Hassel, you've been patiently waiting too. John is one of our co-chairs. He's the co-chair for Southwestern Taunton. John.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to just mention first that Mike Palmer has had his hand up for quite a while, but he doesn't have the hand on the screen.
Sorry.
I'll
go to Mike Palmer next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've just been down to Cornwall on holiday, and we were staying at a hotel. You walk down the road from the hotel a little way, 200, 300 yards, and there's a bus stop, and there's a route 65 that takes you into Falmouth. There's a route going the opposite direction, a 65A, which takes you into Falmouth. They don't follow the same route at all, but they cover different areas. And I'm wondering if perhaps we could introduce this in the Taunton area, because there's a lot of villages that would benefit from that kind of service. I'm thinking particularly in places like Oak and Ninehead. There used to be a bus through from Cotford to Wellington that went through Oak and Ninehead. They're not served at all now. Well, Oak is by the 25 going through to Wiveliscombe, but they can't get anywhere else other than on the 25 route from Dulverton to Taunton. But I think it might be an idea if we looked into that as a positive idea to try and cover some of the smaller villages which don't get served by buses. That's one point. When we started off Somerset Bus Partnership, we discussed the possibility of having a route committee. So people on Route 25, for example, I'm sorry to keep using that, but that was the one that I was trying to get further buses for. But if you could have sort of feeders into the Route 25 as part of the DRT system, coming from villages which used in years gone by to have a market day bus service, perhaps on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So to reintroduce that, because people still want to go to the towns, even though the markets may have disappeared. And these smaller villages could benefit from that kind of service. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll go to Mike Palmer next, if I may. Mike, are you there? By the way, those who...
Is that better? Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Right. Just before you go, Mike, can I just say, those who've got their hands up and who've now spoken, unless they want to speak again, could they take their yellow hands down? Mike, over to you. Sorry to interrupt.
Couple of things on this one. On what you said about Somerset County Council. But first of all, I'd like to go to what Glenn said about this bus users group.
Yeah.
Now, 15 years ago, I was Bus Users UK for Somerset, mainly Taunton. And every month we used to have a meeting. And we'd all get around the table with the bus drivers, or sorry, the bus managers and the under managers. And there was 6 of the general public and 1 member of the parish of the county council. And every time that member turned up, he always said the same thing. I haven't bought my diary, so I can't write anything down. So at the next meeting, he knew nothing. Now, I went to speak to that man and he refused to speak to me. He sent down one of his underlings. And we had the same arguments over and over again about Somerset helping the bus services. And it was always the same. We haven't got the money. I'm on the 25 route, all right? And as far as I'm concerned, that route is the worst route in the county. The first bus in the morning out of Norton Fitzwarren or Cotford St Luke is 9:30. The last bus into Cotford St Luke or Wiveliscombe is 16:45. 4:45. Nobody can get home who's working. The only people that benefit from that particular bus service are mothers with kids at school. And it's a crazy situation. So a few years back, I went and had a word with the manager of the bus company. And I said, what is going on? And his exact words to me were, when I send out the 25, I have to chuck 85p down the drain because that's the money I'm losing on every trip that bus makes. He said, and until Somerset County Council start paying the full whack on a bus pass, then we'll have the money to run the bus service properly. And I said, what do you mean? He said, for every bus pass that comes to us, the county council pay 18p on that ticket, not £2, 18p. Now, I used to go, we haven't had them for a long time, but I used to go to West Country transport meetings at the cricket ground.
Yep.
And while I was there, I was speaking, I got to speaking at dinner time to the manager of Stagecoach. And I said, look, I said, the bus company we've got in Taunton is absolutely terrible. I said, it's not doing the job it's supposed to be doing. And I said, I've been to Paynton, and I've been to Torquay, and I said, your buses are fantastic. Would you be prepared to take over the bus company in Somerset? And he said, Mike, he said, I will take over Somerset buses on one condition. Get rid of the Conservative Party that are in charge. He said, because as long as they're in charge, he said, we're not going to get anywhere. Now, you stated that the bus company are going to get 163 million from the government. How much of that money do you reckon is going to be creamed off before it goes to the bus companies? Because I'll tell you what, I am convinced that at least a third will be creamed off. When the county council, or the county council organised the park and ride, they gave the bus company 8 million quid, and the bus company for 6 whole weeks bought in brand new buses for the park and ride. 6 weeks later, they were putting on what they've got now. Second-hand buses, which are smoking at the back and are not fit for human consumption. So, to be honest with you, until we get this Somerset County Council sorted out, we are wasting our time with looking at the bus situation as we are. Like I said, every time I went to meetings, it was always the same situation. You know, the county council didn't want it out, and
Mike,
they still don't want it out.
I think you've made your point quite forcibly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Susanna Clements.
Hiya. Yeah, a couple of points. One is it would be really helpful if this organisation could set up some sort of communication structure, so that, just like an overarching thing, so that people can feed back into it to the rep, so that reps don't have to set it up for themselves. That would just be really helpful. Just like, it doesn't really matter how it's done, as long as it's done and it's not somebody's individual decision. And also to communicate with the bus.
Susanna, what are you looking for? Just to explain it, because it sounds a really interesting point. What do we need to do you think?
I don't know, I haven't thought it through. It's just occurred to me. But I talked to one of our reps this afternoon, and I said it would be great if there was some way that people, that like the residents, would know who to get hold of. And she said, yeah, that would be good, but she didn't really know who to ask to do it. I know Lindsay's on the call here, whether, and Lindsay's a town council, whether town council should do it, whether and she's busy and so forth. So it'd just be great if it came from outside, just like I don't know, but I'm sure we can figure it out. And also to communicate with the company.
Where are you located?
Glastonbury.
Glastonbury. Okay, fine. Yep.
And my second point is more practical. I've noticed riding the buses, especially some of the smaller companies like Froome Bus, and I used to notice this in Bristol, that the windows are absolutely filthy, which means that you lose all of the, not all of them. Actually, I rode 77 today and it was brilliant. The thing about Somerset buses, they're an incredible tourist draw. They should be, because the landscape is so beautiful. It's such a great way of seeing Somerset. So, and I was saying to somebody, well, I'd clean the windows. You know, if we could do, that would be a great campaigning thing to say, love our buses. We're working with the bus companies. Let's a few of us as volunteers or whatever, like go and clean the windows, like litter picking, same sort of thing, but just chuck. And actually it draws attention. You can use it as publicity and all the rest of it, as well as getting the practical result of cleaner windows and more attractive buses. Those are my 2 points.
I totally agree with that. In fact, one of the things we're thinking of doing is having the best photograph of the month. It could either be a still photograph or a movie photograph from a bus, because riding on buses, especially if it's a double decker, but even a single decker, you do get a really amazing view. As far as contacts are concerned, I'm the Mendip. I'm the co-chair for the Mendip area. So if there's any issues, then please contact me and I'll get back to you. Jevon, you've been sitting very patiently with your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Yes, going back to the timing matters and where we've got, for example, key bus routes going around areas, like I ride my circular tours, we need to have users aware on times of servicings, finishing and cut-off points for awareness to plan a day to do a serving on a service and then ride around, know what time you will be, say, stranded at a particular key suburban or urban area where you can then interchange with a service. All these technologies being put together into our phones and devices, excuse my mum's behind, and then when we interwork with these, like I do on my tours, we can then get an ease into riding around on whatever mode we take. Yesterday on a circular tour, when I reached Malbus station, there were at least 3 servings on an hour on the same corridor, all called off. And when I arrived into Bristol city centre, there was a lot of work busily being done, especially in one street where roadworking was being taken place, but a bus was on a stop, obstructing the street in its place, blocking and queuing others behind. So a lot of operators have to do lots of work, and it is a pandemonium like we've arisen in this meeting, like when rail stations with trains queue behind should an incident arise like we this week have had in Newcastle with a train at a depot. And even today, 2 instances arose, one in Scotland on the A90 with a school bus, and as you've seen today in the news, in Bedminster down Bristol, with fires being caught on double-deckers.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
Thanks, Jevon. Thank you very much. Robin Bastable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened to all your comments. I have no answers, I'm afraid. I live in a rural area of East Somerset around Wincanton. The bus service is not very well used. I don't know the answer. I think Peter has in some ways said it's up to people to advertise, to try and encourage other people to use the bus. It's difficult if you go into Wincanton. The bus stop is a long way away from any of the superstores. I don't know how you do your shopping, walk back a mile with your shopping to catch another bus. I don't know. I honestly don't know. And at the end of the day, bus services need to be able to at least get some income. The other thing that has made me speak is I didn't know the Somerset Bus Partnership was a political forum. You have had 2 speakers who have blatantly stated that if you vote in the Liberal Democrats, everything will change. I am a district councillor for South Somerset District Council. It's Liberal Democrat run. You've already had somebody say that Yeovil Bus Depot is an absolute disgrace. It's run by a Liberal Democrat council. I don't agree with politics in local government at all. I would just like to say different councils have different ideas. I completely agree with everyone. If Somerset County Council, which is Conservative, is saying we're not going to pay for a bus service, I think it's disgusting. But don't lump everyone into the same boat and say, if we all vote Liberal Democrat, we'll get a bus service. It's not guaranteed, guys. We have to do more ourselves. I will try and look into it more. But, you know, I've listened in at your meetings. I apologise for being late. I had a bad meeting today. And there's a lot of good ideas. But at the same time, nobody is going to throw money at something they can see is a huge loss.
Robin, thank you. Just to make it absolutely clear, and I know we've got at least one Conservative county councillor who I've worked with alongside, and I know has battled long and hard and continues to battle long and hard for improved bus services in his area. The Somerset Bus Partnership is not party political whatsoever. We've talked to all the 4 key parties in Somerset and encouraged them to take on board our ideas. We totally support the £163 million bid put in by Somerset County Council, which is majority controlled by the Conservatives. So we are not party political. What we want to do is get as many individual councillors, regardless of party, to buy into our manifesto, and that's what we want to do, and that's what we will battle to do. David, your hand is up. Is there a further point you would like to make?
Well, it's a piece of work because I'm not going to do it all, so you can all share it. The Parliamentary Transport Select Committee is calling for evidence on the National Bus Strategy, and there's a number of politicians on this call from all colours and all persuasions, and a number of councils. So if you go online, guys, and you look at the Parliamentary Transport Select Committee, you've got until the 31st to make a submission, a couple of pages of A4 or 5, explaining what you think about the bus services in the county of Somerset, or the county of Somerset plus its unitaries, with the Metro Mayor as well. And of course, your comments on the West, on the general view of the West Country bus network. And if you want to make comparisons across the Southwest, which I think is a very useful tool, Peter, to be honest,
yep.
I think that's quite important. The other thing I was going to say is one of the options we could do to improve buses, and I only speak about the Mendip issue at the moment, but instead of running a bus in the evenings costing £700,000, I said to Bath and North East Somerset Council an hour ago, Lucy, the 172, 171, 173, 174, we could run some evening buses to Shepton and Wells from Bath and run them via the Park and Ride. So there are ways of using, that's a service, by the way, funded by the Weckham Mayor. So there are ways of doing this and ways of making sure we can improve the bus network. I just make a point about railheads. The reason I did so much work with Somerset County Council a few years ago on the buses out of the Mendip towns was to make sure that we hit the railheads at Bristol and Bath, because the Somerset stations don't have the intercity level of services that Bath and Bristol do, and Western-super-Mare. So that's why there's a large number of services from the Mendip towns into Bristol, Temple Meads, into Bath Spa. And that, I've got to give David Fuller skill is due on that. That was his initiative. He said, well, it's pointless sending people to rural stations at Castle Carey with a bus. Well, we've only got a train every 3 hours. Well, if we can take them out of Wells, Glastonbury Street, straight to Bristol, was a train every half an hour. So that's why we did it. And if you don't like what we did, please say so. But that's what we did, and I was heavily involved in it. And that's why the 376 was a half-hourly service. But
okay, David,
I was going to finally finish on that. The town councils were very supportive of that principle. Travel Watch Southwest, Peter, has a meeting coming up. I haven't got a date. We'll have to find the date. It's going to be in Taunton. And Great Western Railway, which is part of First, of course, has a meeting on the 8th of April. Community Rail Partnership. It's on Zoom. You'll have to go apply to them for a place.
Okay.
But there is bus for integration on it. So those are a couple of points that need to be picked up, but please, it's all about lobbying. It's all about making sure the local councils do the work on this, because I don't think the Baroness is going to ride to the rescue in a huge way. So I think we need to sort of disillusion ourselves endorsing Somerset. Got to do a bit more of our own localism, as they call it, and just try to build a better bus service, but with support from the Department of Transport. And I think that's where we've got to look at it.
Thanks, David. Thanks. The Somerset Bus Partnership will be contributing to the review of the Bus Back Better. Alan Peters, I'm really sorry, I didn't spot your hand has been up for some time. Please go ahead.
That's not a problem at all, Peter. For those who don't know me, I'm owner of a bus in Bristol and chairman of the Coach Operators Federation, and also vice chairman of the West of England Bus Operators Association, which is basically a WECA thing and has little involvement in Somerset. David, as always, puts me forward as a suitable person to speak. I'm not sure if there are any other bus operators actually represented on the call tonight. Maybe you can see any, Peter.
Yeah.
I don't reckon.
I don't think there are, no.
So it's up to me then, right?
It's down to you. Yes.
Your slide with the comparatives of county council spending was very interesting, but in fairness, Cornwall is an exception because Cornwall had a special grant from government as an experiment to improve rural bus services. Whether that experiment has worked or not, nobody ever says. There's a distinct possibility, in my view, that in 2 years or 3 years' time, when that money runs out, all these services will disappear again, and they'll become much more like Somerset, perhaps. Bus service publicity. A lot of people, I was commercial officer at Badgerline for my sins when it was formed. And a lot of people used to say that we couldn't organise a booze up in a brewery. We could organise it easily, but nobody would ever come because we can't publicise anything. I understand that, for instance, the soap powder industry spend 25% of their turnover on marketing. That includes packaging, obviously, but you know, I think the bus industry spends about 1% maybe. It is a difficulty. Another difficulty is the fact that in some cases, certainly in WECA, where I'm more involved, we're not allowed to touch a bus shelter. All publicity has to be done by the county council. And we have to rely on, and it produces a problem because they estimate, we produce a timetable with timing points 10 or 15 minutes apart, and say there's 10 bus stops between those two timing points. They estimate the times the buses will be there. That's not the times that we reckon the buses will be there. We want the people to be there at the time the bus left the previous stop. So it's awkward because for an operator, you're not sure whether you can actually touch the shelters yourself, whether you can put up the publicity yourself. And I will admit, most operators are very poor at publicity.
Yes.
What was the next point I wanted to make? Has Somerset, do you know, been contacted by DFT to actually elaborate on their BSIP plan?
We don't know. We haven't been told by Somerset that they have been.
The suggestion is, widely held, that the councils that are going to receive any money have been contacted by DFT for confirmation of details.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that WECA have. There's also, as David, I think, said, there's something like 18 councils who will get a large slice and 20 councils that will get a sliver. And the rest will probably get nothing at all. And somebody said on here about the 163 million, which in honesty, I looked at the Somerset BSIP and it looks a very good BSIP, but the most you're likely to get is 1.6 million, I think, rather than, or maybe even 16, but nowhere near 163 million. And the BSIP consists of a thing that a bus company agrees to do on an enhanced partnership. The bus company agrees to do certain things in return for the council doing certain things. If the council gets no money for its BSIP, then the bus companies don't have to do anything for their side. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. I can't remember what the other thing. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, Mike Palmer said about the reimbursement for pensioners. That actually destroyed 3 commercial services that I operated because the level of reimbursement was so low that before pensioners went free, I had a service that was £5 return. Pensioners paid half fare, £2.50, and the council made up £1.75. So I was getting £3.75. When pensioners went free, I got £1.92.
Yep.
And you know, you just can't run on the level of reimbursement. They're now promising that in 2023, they'll relook at the concessionary fare reimbursement factor and revisit it and recalculate it. 2023, there's not going to be anything left.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really good to get the view of a bus operator. I used to call myself a bus protester until I realized that the only way that we were going to get anywhere is to work with the operators. And I then became a campaigner and campaigned to get people to use buses and to be on side with bus operators. We need to work with bus operators. We would need to work with the officers at Somerset County Council. And I have to say that the officers I'm dealing with at Somerset County Council are all very impressive individuals, and they respond very promptly, not always with the answers I like, but they respond very promptly. We need to work in a partnership. What there needs to be is a political will to do something to support our buses. That's why we come out with our Bus Manifesto. We need to work with all the political parties with that. And so as a final note, I would just go back to that plea. If you'd like a copy of our if you'd like copies of our Bus Manifesto, please contact us through Facebook or email us at Somerset Bus Partnership at gmail.com, and we'll send you copies. And let's get candidates in this election to say that they want to battle for buses just as much as we all do. We still have...
Peter, is it worth after the next meeting, after the elections, perhaps inviting one of, as Alan pointed out, one of the directors from First Group and wherever else, Stagecoach or the smaller operators, which Lucy can grab hold of, and have a panel, and then we can put these questions, because I was just going to finally say, and I forgot to say it to everybody, for the Sedgemoor people, they're not starting the Sunday tourist services in the Mendip area on the Sunday buses until the 9th of July, I've just been told tonight. Bob Driscoll's very lucky, he's got his down in Dorset in April, but no Sunday services on a lot of Somerset routes apart from the Mineheads and, until July. So I think having Doug Claringbold and the new portfolio holder plus Simon Goff from First Southwest, or let Simon speak for Doug, they speak together. And then somebody from the Southwest coaches, which Tony'd have the contact with, Froome Bus, Lucy Travers, just get them in, and Stagecoach, because they run the Falcon, get them all on a panel, and then all these nice people on the call tonight can ask the questions to the operators. And the person I forgot to mention was with the mayor is it John Turner from Somerset Tourism?
Yeah,
and he was making the point, Peter, wasn't he, about the need for a marketing campaign across the whole of Somerset, from Bath and Bristol, Weston, right through to Minehead and through to Lynmouth and Yeovil and down into Dorset, to sell the buses and the public transport. So perhaps we should invite John to come along, and that would make a good evening, and it probably get Adam back and have a good evening, and people can put loads of questions about what they want to do and what the operators can do, and then they can say what the county council and the Wecker and Devon and North Somerset should be doing, and Dorset and Wiltshire as well. So,
David,
I think
agree.
that would be I put it as a suggestion. It didn't come from me. Look, it came from Alan Peters. So let's see and I think it would work on a Zoom call, and I think it could be interesting.
I think it would be an excellent idea. And the meeting both you and I attended with Dan Norris, with both Doug Claringbold from First and Nick Small from Stagecoach, just demonstrated the value of actually getting bus operators into those sorts of meetings. So we will invite them, and hopefully they will choose to come along and join us. But the way is undoubtedly is to work with campaigners, working with bus operators, with the local transport authority. That's the way forward. But also there is a political way forward, which is a separate communication. We do need to try and get as many of our candidates in the unitary election to back our Bus Manifesto. So please, all of you, do make contact, and let's get them to sign up and endorse as individual candidates our Bus Manifesto. That would be a major step forward. The fact that we've kept 2/3 of you for now well over an hour, and well, it's just an hour and 45 minutes, is a tribute to your commitment to buses. We're committed to buses. Somerset Bus Partnership is going to work as hard as it can to get buses higher up the agenda in Somerset, because as we've seen, we really need to do that. You need to do it for your communities, and we need to do it as much as we can in support of those communities with Somerset County Council. So,
Peter, Graham
yes.
Walton's had his hand up for about an hour.
Graham, are you there, Graham? Sorry, I haven't seen that.
You're muted.
Graham Warburton, you're still muted. We're not hearing you.
I can't unmute
That's
you.
better. That's better.
It, Graham. Go ahead. Graham, please, I'm sorry you've been waiting so long.
Graham Warburton. And then my simple question was, and I'm sorry I was a bit late, but what do we know about the situation with the Taunton bus station? I mean, it's absolutely dreadful that that it is the hub of the county, which has the services to Chard and to Yeovil and Street, Taunton, Bridgewater, Minehead and Wellington, and it's all closed, and we have to sit outside in a shelter now, and even the national buses can no longer use it apparently. The street bus turns around in the middle of the town. So what is happening about this? Do we know?
I had an email this morning because I raised that with Somerset County Council, and the email I had was the and I'm reading from the email this morning, the Taunton bus station facility actually closed in March 2020, so it's been closed for almost 2 years now. However, Buses of Somerset had an arrangement with Somerset West and Taunton Council, whereby they leased space on the site from them for parking their vehicles. The site was only used for this purpose and not for picking up or setting down any passengers. We were aware that this arrangement was coming to an end, and this week and our public transport team have been working with the operator to identify appropriate layover bays for buses where required and advise of any action needed from their perspective to facilitate this. Somerset County Council go on to say the bus station facility is currently owned by Somerset West and Taunton. Mike Rigby, I'm not sure if he's still on the call, but
Still here, Peter.
Okay, I'll invite you to say something after this, if I may, Mike. But we are working, this is Somerset County Council saying, we are working closely with them on the study that WSP, their consultants, are undertaking in relation to this provision. As part of the move to unitary, there are various work streams looking at the activities across all 5 councils, and bus stations will be picked up under the assets and infrastructure work streams. As these evolve, more strategic level discussions will be required in relation to the Taunton bus station and funding availability. Thank you, Mike, for saying that you're here. Can you add and help us any more on that issue?
Yes, well, the district council has always owned half of the bus station there. And when the bus company chose 2 years ago to no longer use the bus station, we decided as a district council for strategic purposes to buy the bit of it that we didn't already own. But the bottom line is that the bus company doesn't want to run a bus station in Taunton, and we can't make it. We'll find a future use potentially for the bus station in another form, or if the BSIP bid is successful, then there's the possibility of using some of those funds to operate a bus station which the First Bus and others may then want to use, but it will need some fairly significant investment to make it attractive again, I think. But as I say, the bottom line is that First Bus decided that they no longer wish to run a bus station in Taunton. That was disappointing to everyone. I do think that in the short to medium term, though, we do need to find an option. We do need to find some way of there being proper waiting space for buses, as has been said, that act as a hub for a wide part of certainly the western half of Somerset. So we'll continue to do that. I think we'll see what comes of the BSIP bid, and then I think we'll have to make some decisions off the back of that. But we can't make First use it. That's the problem we have.
It just seems amazing that we have the county town. There we are, the hub of the county, and there's no bus station, and it was very good as it was before, apart from the fact that the cuts, of course, had closed the toilets down, and some of the, I mean, to come in from Yeovil is over an hour's route, and its toilets are all shut. Okay, it's absolutely unbelievable to me that a place like Taunton does not have a lovely bus station. Anyway, there we go.
Mike, can I make a positive suggestion? Because I told you I was working with Steve Darling down in Torquay, the Liberal leader. I think we should do some development on that site. We don't need it as a depot. So we develop part of it for whatever you think is a good purpose. We could come up with some shops, we could come up with some business use. And then we pump the money from that development back into some form of bus station. So we got to look everything we can, not only rely on this bid, because I don't think we're going to get a lot of money from this bid. So I think we should just look at everything we can, explore. John Hassel, I think, has explored the Gloucester. Well, he was with me in Gloucester recently looking at the bus station, to be fair. And that is a massive piece of so is Exeter. But they're all owned by the councils, and they've all found ways of getting the money. So we've got to just think outside the box. And I think if you do that, I think you'll find First. What I think is shocking, and I was subject to it, National Express change you over, and I'm in a wheelchair, outside county the county hall between the buses going to Plymouth and Penzance and going to North Devon. And you get literally get people on the streets being transferred by National Express as a major interchange. We need to look at all of this, and I think I think you ought to do some work at Somerset West and explore all other options for a bus station, not necessarily relying on that BSIP bid. That would be my advice anyway.
Well, thanks for that, David. I mean, it won't be Somerset West and Taunton that does that work. We're not the Transport Authority. It will be the County Council and whatever comes next. But I'm more than happy to play my part in all of that, although I do think you've just let the cat out of the bag, David, in terms of what we might get from BSIP.
Let's keep our
I
fingers
didn't
crossed,
mean to
Mike.
say anything. I just want you to get Somerset to talk to Steve Darling and other councils of all colours in the southwest, even Camborne, and find out how get them out of their little Somerset box and just get them talking and finding out how to do it. That's the only thing I'm saying.
I'm happy to talk to Steve Darling, but as a Truro boy, I'm not sure I can talk to Camborne, David.
Okay, I think we're nearly at 2 hours, so I think we will draw it to a close. Thank you to all of you for staying with us throughout. I hope it's been useful and interesting, and perhaps at times informative as well. Please ask for copies of our Somerset Bus Manifesto, and please use it during the election campaign. As I keep on saying, we are not party political. We want supporters from all the parties, and we know we've actually got supporters from all the parties. So let's see how things move ahead. I will take on David Redwell's suggestion and talk with my co-chairs, Tony Rees from South Somerset, Glenn Burrows from Sedgemoor, and John Hassel from Southwestern Taunton, to see if we can organise a meeting in the near future with the bus operators. I think it would be really interesting if we could get them to come along to another Zoom meeting like this. Zoom meetings are ideal for a county like Somerset. You don't have to drive 40 miles to Taunton, as I would have to. We can just sit at home and talk to each other and hopefully benefit from that. So thank you again. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for staying with us. And I hope this weather continues over Friday and the weekend, and we can all enjoy it on a bus going to somewhere and looking for the best photographs that we can take from the bus. So take care, and we'll see you again shortly, no doubt. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Cheers. Good night. Thank you.